Rohan, I know you've got to run, so if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you before you do about same thing, advertising on platforms, best practices. One of the things that I'm always wondering about is how, like with in particular the Facebook ad platform, for example, you're able to really hyper target when you've got people's email addresses, and yet so few brands bother with collecting their email and keeping an autoresponder, that sort of thing. So can you talk about some best practices for advertising that you recommend and that you perhaps utilize in places where it works and where it doesn't?
Well, amazingly, our company is talking to David's company about him doing that stuff for us. Because, man, I have no idea about any of that. I'm so like old school. We know it's there and we know we need it. But when you have specialists that look into it, it's just amazing that the very person that we're all talking to is here right now. So, so I don't want to divert, but yeah, look, guys, I'm so sorry I have to leave. This is amazing. Hopefully we can do it again. But I kind of feel like we should talk about this stuff once a month anyway, and share things that we're picking up along the way, because it's, how often do you run into another social manager who's sitting here trying to figure this thing out? So yeah, it's been great. Thanks, Mike, Paul, for setting it up, and it's great to meet you all.
Safe travels.
Great to connect with you, buddy. We'll stay in touch.
Bye.
I hope I can hold the rest of you for just a few more minutes, if that's okay. David, this was a great segue to you. I guess do you want to pick that up from wherever?
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know, and I'll try to keep this short. A lot of people don't know what all data is floating around, like from a band's Facebook page, from their Instagram page, etc. Facebook will never allow D2C data, direct to consumer, right? So you're not going to get their first name, last name, email address, zip code, IP. You're not going to get any of that stuff, right? If you have a good CRM platform, and I recommend Klaviyo, which I'm new to the platform, but it's incredible. That's where you can upload all of that content. But Facebook does allow you access to anyone that's been to your Instagram page, whether they follow you or not. Anyone that's been to your Facebook page, whether they follow you or not. You can even segment it down based on their level of engagement. People who engaged with this specific post, but not this one. Or people who saved this post, people who commented on this post. You can do the same with all the video content on both of those platforms as well. And you can segment that based on 7 varying levels of engagement. So you can retarget people that watch 3 seconds of the video, 10 seconds of the video, 15 seconds, 25%, 50%, 75%, 95%. Like you said with the email addresses for bands that do have a newsletter, you can export that as a CSV or comma separated value file, and you can upload all of that. So when it comes to, and my background in doing this isn't for bands. I was doing this for tons of different companies in tons of different industries. And when I joined We Came as Romans, it was like, oh shit, let's just do this for our next album cycle, because if we don't, we're fucked. Because our 4th album cycle tanked. We went from like 1,200 cap rooms to 300 cap rooms. And we immediately knew, like, okay, we need to get this new album directly to all of our core fans that loved us from the first 3 album cycles. And so I got CSV files from our old label and from our merch company of anybody that ever bought a piece of We Came as Romans merch in that time frame. And for the initial release of the album, every single dollar as far as paid efforts went to just retargeting those people to essentially say, hey, our 4th album sucked and we know that. And here's an album that doesn't suck that we think you're going to like. So we could rebuild that trust and rebuild that foundation. Meanwhile, all that new data is coming in. We debuted the videos on Facebook exclusively before getting them onto YouTube, so we could keep everything inside of our digital database there. And all these audiences update every 3 to 5 seconds. So as users start to engage with the content, they're compartmentalizing or segmenting themselves into those various audiences that you've created. Now we can just look at a broad view of the 100,000 people that watched this video. We had 80,000 people that watched 10 seconds of it. Well, why did we lose the 20,000 people? maybe the first 15 seconds of the video is not engaging, or maybe they just didn't like it. But the good news is, as long as they watch 3 seconds, you can retarget them and follow them around the internet. So the ads aren't just going to run on Facebook or Instagram. They'll pop up on whatever apps the user is using, whatever other websites they're visiting, and you're only paying for impressions on those. So it's a very cheap way to stay in touch with those fans, but it allows you a macro view of, here's all the people that are the least engaged with our content, and here's the people that are the most engaged. These are the people that watched 95% of all 3 music videos we've released. It's probably time to target them for a pre-order bundle or something along those lines, because we can see exactly how engaged they are with the content.
David, my brain wants to ask you about abandoned cart retargeting, but I'm not going to do it.
Oh, I love it. I'm
not going to do it, but I do want to ask you about how effective YouTube ads can be.
I think they can be great. We have Hyperculture. The way our business is structured is we have 3 different specialists that have 3 different backgrounds. So I'm familiar with the AdWords platform. I've done a bunch of campaigning on it, but Tanner is normally our go-to guy in that regard. To my knowledge, which is much more limited than him, and as Jeff was saying, like, YouTube is the 2nd largest search engine in the world behind Google. And YouTube is owned by Google, and it's exclusively video-based content. So the fact that it's the 2nd largest search engine is just absolutely unreal. The retargeting possibilities there, as well as like the ad placement there, it's really easy for, let's say a band wants to have market share with Wage War, right? Great. You can go just drop your music video as a pre-roll or a mid-roll ad on Wage War's YouTube channel or on the Fearless Records YouTube channel in that case. And you can retarget video viewers who saw that ad with original pieces of content. They don't allow the same sophistication of data segmentation that Facebook does. So I'm always going to be biased and err on the Facebook side. As long as you have a good strategy, I think that your dollar is going to go a lot further on Facebook, but I think that YouTube has way more importance when it comes to longevity, which is where Finn's expertise would come in, and like really building brand culture on your channel there, and really making sure that you're putting, not only quality content out, but that it's being delivered consistently. Not only as far as like the timeline of when you're getting that out, but it's also kind of in alignment with your overall brand ethos. So I would say, there's so many free resources out there. Like, all the shit that I learned was from experience. I never went to school. I learned through trial and error from starting my first company for digital marketing stuff. And I hired a lot of coaches and made a lot of mistakes all the way, but most of it was listening to a lot of great podcasts and reading a lot of great books. So I would say, put one of your band guys who seems to be the most like detail oriented or data driven person, make that their field, and then give someone else the responsibility of YouTube and make that their full-time thing in the band for 6 to 9 months. And you can see quantifiable improvement, not only in the audience that you're building, but if your band is already cash flowing even a little bit, you can scale that pretty drastically. It takes a long time to get your band to a point where it's cash flowing. And that's something with Hyperculture. We have a developing artist program that we are insanely strict on, because most bands come in and they're like, oh, we're going to hire this agency and they're going to blow us up really quickly. Fuck no, we're not. We can compress the amount of time that it takes to get there, but I never want a band coming on and thinking, hey, we're going to hire this agency and it's going to start paying for itself in 2 months. No, people can become curious about your band, but they won't become a raving fan until they have some kind of emotional experience. Most of the time, that's going to be they see you at a show. And we can get more bodies in the room for you the first time you play there, sure, but it's still up to the band to win those people over. Sometimes it can be your song got someone through a very difficult emotional time in their life, and that's incredible, but that's the anomaly. Most of the time, it's you've got to get your butts into rooms and you've got to play. I don't get why bands that are starting out now aren't playing as many shows as possible. It just seems stupid to me. That's the only place you're going to win fans over. Right now, they're not, and it's understandable. But even
is your experience that 90% of the time that data-oriented guy is the drummer?
No, it's normally the singer.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it's normally the singer or the guitarist. I don't know if that's like going against anything y'all have experienced, but normally drummers just care about drums.
Jeff, I got a segue because I'd ask you about a self-liquidating funnel and a whole bunch of other stuff that I'd love to also dig into. But